hijacking a cargo ship in the Red Sea, 25 crew members taken hostage. Those militants claiming the vessel seized in international waters has ties to Israel. ABC's Marcus Moore reporting in tonight.
Under the scorching Caribbean sun, a seemingly harmless cargo ship glides through international waters, but hidden within is a horrific secret. 300 tons of drug chemicals, hundreds of millions of dollars in dirty money, and 42 hostages held captive by the notorious Tren de Aragua terrorist gang. On September 3rd, the U.S. military launched a lightning strike, turning the criminals' floating fortress into a fierce battlefield. How could 200 Navy SEALs and lethal drones dismantle this criminal empire in less than 30 minutes while rescuing every hostage? Comment number 1, and join us to uncover the truth behind this daring military operation where steel smoke and courage confronted evil. Don't miss out. On September 3rd at 10:45 in the morning, the calm Caribbean waters to the south concealed a storm of steel and violence ready to unfold. On the horizon, a ship 110 meters long, weighing over 7,200 tons, glided through international waters. Disguised as a civilian cargo vessel, it hid a dark secret. Inside its hull, the notorious Tren de Aragua gang had stashed 300 tons of methamphetamine precursor chemicals and held over 40 civilians captive, forced to work as prisoners. For years, Tren de Aragua had been more than just a criminal organization. It operated like a shadow army. Intelligence reports connect this group to over 2,000 murders, 3,500 cases of human trafficking, and a vast drug distribution network that stretches from Venezuela to the streets of Miami, Houston, and New York. They are not just smugglers. They are a designated foreign terrorist organization operating with the protection of the Nicolas Maduro regime. Their influence isn't measured in miles, but in lives ruined. The value of the cargo aboard the ship is staggering. If processed, 300 tons of precursor chemicals could produce 190 tons of methamphetamine worth nearly $569 million on the American market. Along with the drugs, there are 13,000 barrels of cash, a fortune used to buy weapons, hire assassins, and fund terrorism across the Western Hemisphere. As the ship moves further north, it becomes not only the lifeblood of the gang, but a floating arsenal of chaos, a ticking time bomb filled with drugs, money, and human suffering. Today, the United States has decided to act. This is not just a smuggling vessel, it is a floating time bomb filled with poison for our children, guarded by killers and fueled by dirty money. By 11:05 in the morning on September 3rd, the United States had positioned its forces. As the drug ship moved steadily through the southern Caribbean, U.S. forces readied a precise yet ruthless operation. The mission was simple in theory, but daunting in execution: neutralize the gang's floating fortress without jeopardizing the lives of the innocent hostages. The first move came from the air. From a secret base in Curacao, the Pentagon launched 50 kamikaze drones, each no larger than a motorcycle, but equipped with a 40-pound warhead and advanced targeting software. Flying just 150 feet above the water, they flew below radar detection unseen until it was too late. Together, they carried the explosive power of 2 Tomahawk cruise missiles, but with far more deadly precision. Meanwhile, at sea, a disguised fishing vessel, unmarked and seemingly harmless, silently approached within 8 nautical miles of the target. Hidden in the cargo hold were 200 U.S. Navy SEALs, the elite of the elite. Their gear included Mk-29 breathing systems, allowing each to stay underwater for 6 hours without producing a single bubble. They were the silent blade beneath the storm, waiting for chaos above before striking from below. The numbers were truly staggering. 250 American soldiers and drones faced off against the gang's 150 armed guards, many poorly trained but reckless. The tactical advantage was overwhelming. Every angle was calculated. Diversionary strikes from above, silent infiltration from below, and communications cut off once inside. To the gang members on the ship, it was just another day at sea. They had no idea that the world's most advanced military had surrounded them, watching, waiting. In reality, the countdown to their destruction had already begun. These numbers are truly staggering, aren't they? At exactly 11:22 in the morning on September 3rd, the order was given. From beyond the horizon, the swarm of 50 kamikaze drones descended on the gang's ship like a storm of steel hornets. Each raced in at over 300 miles per hour, skimming the waves until the last moment before climbing and slamming into their targets. The first explosion hit the ship's stern. A drone carrying 18 pounds of C4 detonated into a machine gun nest, instantly killing 3 armed guards and shredding the ship-mounted weapon. Within 30 seconds, over a dozen explosions rocked the vessel. The ship shuddered violently as bulkheads were torn apart. Fuel tanks exploded and a column of smoke 200 feet high rose into the Caribbean sky. The gang's gunmen panicked. Some fired blindly into the air, emptying 30-round magazines into the darkness. Others rushed toward the hostages, trying to use them as human shields, but the U.S. drones were programmed with surgical precision. They avoided the cargo hold containing civilians and instead targeted the armory and heavily armed fighters. By the second minute, 37 separate explosions had ripped through the ship's defenses. A drone slammed into the forward deck, exploding in a room filled with ammunition crates. The blast incinerated over 4,000 7.62 millimeter rounds, triggering a chain of secondary explosions that tore through 4 adjacent compartments. In less than 5 minutes, the gang's command structure collapsed. 9 gunmen were confirmed dead instantly, while 40 others were injured or incapacitated. The surviving, panic-stricken members jumped into the sea, plunging into waters where U.S. reconnaissance teams tracked them using infrared scanners. However, the drones were only the first wave of the assault. As the final drone slammed into the bridge, destroying nearly $3 million worth of communication equipment, the gang ship was left nearly blind and deaf. Smoke poured from its shattered hull and fires raged uncontrollably across the upper decks. Amid the chaos, 200 Navy SEALs waited silently in the depths, spread out in an encircling formation within 500 yards of the ship. The explosions above were their signal. As the last drone detonated, shaking the vessel from bow to stern, the divers ascended through the water, moving like ghostly shadows toward the hull. The battlefield was now divided between air and sea. Above, a burning fortress crumbled in chaos. Below, an encircling ring of armored warriors closed in. The trap was no longer theoretical. The Americans were inside the kill zone and the gang had no escape. As the final drone strike hit the gang ship at 11:28 in the morning, the sea erupted with movement. From all sides, 200 SEALs surfaced, breaking the water like specters rising from the abyss. Equipped with suppressed MP-7 submachine guns and combat knives, they attached magnetic grapples to the ship's hull and began their climb. Within 90 seconds, the first teams breached the deck. The ship's defender survivors of the drone bombardment rushed to resist, but the SEALs surged forward like a wave, each 12-man team hitting different access points. In a portside corridor, a team cleared 4 rooms in under 40 seconds, neutralizing 6 gang gunmen with precise headshots. On the starboard side, breaching teams used thermite charges to cut through a locked bulkhead, then tossed flashbang grenades. The burst of light and sound left 8 armed guards disoriented, reeling, and helpless. The battle raged, deck by deck. Gang gunmen, some blinded by smoke, fired wildly in panic. In a firefight near the engine room, a SEAL team exchanged over 200 rounds with entrenched defenders. 3 SEALs were hit in the shoulder, thigh, and forearm, but continued fighting, pressing forward until the last gunman fell. Do you support the fight to destroy these gangs? If yes, comment number 2. If not, comment number 5. The most critical task was rescuing the hostages. At 11:35 in the morning, Team Bravo breached the cargo hold where 42 civilians, men and women forced to work, were chained. The guards tried to use them as human shields, but the SEALs' laser-sighted rifles took them down in under 10 seconds. All hostages were freed, and medical units immediately began stabilizing the weakest. By now, the Americans controlled nearly 70% of the ship. The bridge was destroyed, the engine room secured, and the gang's gunmen fled to the lower decks. A SEAL strike team swept through the surveillance control center, disabling all camera feeds in 3 minutes, completely blinding the remaining defenders. The casualty ratio was brutal. Within 12 minutes of boarding, the SEALs had killed 15 gang gunmen, captured dozens more, and seized control of all critical compartments. Only 5 SEALs were injured, none critically. In contrast, the gang lost nearly half its fighting force and all command capability. The gunfire dwindled to sporadic bursts, but the outcome was sealed. The gang's floating fortress no longer belonged to them. It was now a battlefield controlled by America's finest warriors. By 11:48 in the morning on September 3rd, the ship fell silent save for the crackle of fires and the echo of American boots on the decks. In less than half an hour, Tren de Aragua's stronghold had been reduced to a shattered steel husk. The battlefield now completely belonged to the United States. The results were truly staggering. In just 26 minutes, U.S. forces had dismantled the heart of one of South America's most violent gangs. Nine gang members lay dead, including 2 mid-level commanders, while over 120 gunmen were captured alive, many too severely injured to resist. 3 of the captives were identified as regional coordinators directly responsible for smuggling routes into Miami and Houston. Their capture marked the collapse of the gang's entire operational branch. The seizure of the cargo was even more shocking. Deep in the ship's hold, the SEALs uncovered 300 tons of methamphetamine precursor chemicals hidden in steel drums disguised as fertilizer containers. On-site chemical experts confirmed that this stockpile could be refined into 190 tons of methamphetamine, enough to flood the U.S. with over 1.5 billion street doses. On the open market, its value exceeded $569 million, a drug fortune snatched from the gang's hands. However, the drugs were only part of the find. In a hidden compartment below the forward deck, SEAL teams pried open containers revealing 13,000 green barrels. Inside were neatly stacked bundles of U.S. dollars, Colombian pesos, and Venezuelan bolivars estimated to be worth $450 million in liquid assets. This was the financial lifeblood of Tren de Aragua, a stockpile used to buy weapons, bribe officials, and fund terrorism across the Western Hemisphere. Now it was in American hands. The human toll was equally decisive. 42 hostages, laborers kidnapped from fishing villages in Venezuela and Colombia were freed. Each received immediate medical care. For these men and women, the nightmare ended on a deck still scarred by fire and blood. By early afternoon, U.S. Navy helicopters roared overhead, evacuating prisoners and cargo from the smoldering wreckage. Standing at a podium in Washington, Secretary of State Marco Rubio delivered a message with ruthless clarity. This is a warning to anyone plotting to bring drugs into the United States. Prepare for destruction. Tren de Aragua thought they were untouchable. Today, they were shattered. The Caribbean Sea closed over the gang's last hope. In a single morning, the United States not only destroyed a ship, but sent shockwaves through the entire underworld of the Americas. As the smoke cleared on September 3rd, the Southern Caribbean bore witness to a battle that would be remembered for decades. In just 26 minutes, the U.S. military dismantled a criminal empire on the high seas. 9 gang members lay dead, over 120 were captured, and 42 civilians walked free from the chains that had bound them for months. The seizures told their own story. 300 tons of methamphetamine precursor chemicals capable of producing 190 tons of meth, equivalent to 1.5 billion street doses, were taken off the market. Alongside that, 13,000 barrels of cash worth nearly $450 million were stripped from Tren de Aragua's lifeblood. With this single operation, the United States not only shattered a smuggling network, but paralyzed the financial pipeline of one of the Western Hemisphere's most violent gangs. For the gang, it was a devastating loss. For the United States, it was a message. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's words echoed across the region. This is a warning. Anyone daring to smuggle drugs into the United States, prepare for destruction. The operation in the Caribbean Sea showcased the power of meticulous preparation and decisive action in the fight against crime. The lesson is clear: no criminal organization, no matter how brutal, is untouchable when confronted with precise coordination and advanced technology. The rescue of 42 hostages and the dismantling of Tren de Aragua's vast fortune underscore that courage, smart strategy, and a commitment to justice can defeat evil, protecting communities from the scourge of drugs and terrorism. The Caribbean Sea witnessed the collapse of Tren de Aragua's floating fortress as the U.S. military turned the criminal ship into a burning pile of scrap metal in just 26 minutes. With 300 tons of drug chemicals, $450 million in cash seized, and 42 hostages rescued, this operation was not only a devastating blow to the underworld, but also a clear warning: no one can challenge America's resolve without paying a heavy price. But will this strike be enough to deter other gangs, or will it spark an even fiercer conflict? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments now, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on the next thrilling stories in the fight against crime.